following is a presentation of WLCN 96.3 FM and WLCNonline.com.
is making an effort to do that.
The Justice Department says 2 former Arkansas officers have been charged with civil rights violations in a violent arrest of a man outside a convenience store that was caught on video. The Dow finished up 104 points. This is AP News.
It is 2 minutes past 4 o'clock. You're tuned to the 4 p.m. 411. I am Loyd Kirby, Marketing Manager here at WLCN. And we're going to talk about a topic today that maybe doesn't get talked about a whole lot, but we're trying to shed some light on it. According to a 2019 National Center for Injury Prevention study, 41.5% of Illinois women and almost 26% of Illinois men experience physical violence, sexual violence, or stalking with their intimate partner at some point during their lifetimes. And our guests today are going to talk to us about a service available to Logan County residents who may be experiencing that, who may be experiencing that, or their families. So we're welcoming to the program today Jeannie Higdon, who is the program manager, and Abby Behrens, the case manager coordinator with the Butterfly Project. So ladies, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Sure thing. So what is the Butterfly Project? Let's start with that, and we'll dig into it a little bit more.
Sure. The Butterfly Project is a program through Children's Home and Aid that provides services to the dyadic relationship of non-offending caregiver and child following exposure to domestic violence.
Okay. And as far as the Butterfly Project, Mabel is in the background. Apparently she's interested. Who is eligible for Butterfly Project services from the Butterfly Project?
We provide services. We actually serve 5 counties, Logan being one of the counties, and it's from for children or for parents and their child ages 0 to 18 who again have been impacted by violence. So there's no cost to the program, and it's really free to anybody who needs our services. Okay.
And domestic violence, of course, comes in many different forms. Can you maybe educate us a little bit about what domestic violence is and some of the different forms it takes?
Sure. Our biggest, the numbers that we see is that intimate partner violence. So it's power and control, somebody having power and control over somebody else in an established relationship, such as the most common one that we see is partners. So couples or parent-child or other caregiver or child. So again, there's an established intimate relationship, and it's the violence. It can be physical, it can be mental, it can be emotional, sexual stalking, all those things that you talked about.
Okay. Another one in doing a little research for this that I found was something I hadn't thought about, economic abuse, at least. Maybe it's not violence per se, but certainly another way to influence control. And as you mentioned, psychological abuse, another one this was the U.S. Department of Justice website I was looking at, talking about domestic violence being, as you mentioned, an abusive behavior in a relationship where one partner tries to gain or maintain power over another. And another one I hadn't thought about, technological abuse, which I guess is becoming more and more prevalent the more technology sort of influences or permeates our lives. So what can you folks do for folks who are experiencing some sort of domestic violence or something like that?
Sure. So our program is, it's really built on 3 main components, such as community awareness. That's us coming out and doing shows like yours, or trainings in our community, or community events that are held, having our information and materials there, as well as coalition building. So we have, in all 5 counties that we serve, we have a very strong community coalition made up of partners that might come into contact with the same families. And then we do have our direct services to families, and those direct services really are individualized and customized based on whatever the family needs. So we know that all services will include our therapeutic component, meaning that we provide therapy to the non-offending caregiver and the child, again. But a model that we have really begun to adopt and to really work with and seen some great outcomes is providing case management services to the same families. Because a lot of times if a family's fleeing or recently out of that kind of situation, there's a lot of things that their brain space is taking up worrying about, such as housing, food security, employment, childcare, medical providers. And so if your brain is so full worrying about getting all those basic needs met, it's really hard to then sit down in a therapy session and say, okay, let's really talk about the things that have happened and how we can help you move through your journey. And so what we've been able to do is we have some great staff on Abby's team that are really providing those case management services. So connecting them to all those coalition partners that I talked about, helping locate housing, all those things. So food, the childcare, all those things that our families need. So then they don't have to worry about that. And then their brain space opens up and they're able to really make progress in our therapy.
Okay. Once again, if our topic today is domestic violence, and we have folks here from the Butterfly Project. If you'd like to call in with questions or comments, 217-648-5510, the number to call. Or if you want to email a question or comment, 4pm411 at WLCNonline.com. Our guest today, Jeannie Higdon and Abby Behrens, talking to us about the Butterfly Project. How long has the project been available to residents of Logan County?
Of Logan County, it's within the last 4 to 5 years. The Butterfly Project has been with Children's Home and Aid since about 2009. And a couple of years ago, we were lucky enough to write a grant to be able to expand into the counties outside of just McLean County. We did our research. It looks like you've done a lot of your research too, and realized that there's families more than just what we serve in Bloomington normal community that really need our services. So we're unique in that we can provide in-home services and help eliminate that transportation barrier, getting families to services that can help them heal following exposure.
Okay. And talked a little bit about what you do for victims. What is the process? How does someone make use of your services, or how do they get on your radar, I guess?
Well, a lot of it is self-referrals. Our families have heard about us through word of mouth, or they might have heard about us through another community service provider. So anybody can call and refer themselves. The number is 309-827-0374. They can give us a call and ask to speak to somebody in the Butterfly Project. And so the families themselves can call, and then what we do is we really kind of assess the family and sit down with them, talk about our services, and make sure that this is something that they want. And then from there, we work with a great group of individuals, our therapists and our case managers, who the case managers really assess those basic needs that we talked about just a few moments ago. And then our therapists really sit down and do some assessments that kind of measure where the impact is hit the family the hardest, and then we customize and individualize those services for the families. So if they're looking for us, again, they can give us a call on that number or go to childrenshomeandaid.org, and our information is on the webpage as well. And you can send us an email or give us a call, and somebody on our team would be happy to get back to anybody else.
Okay. We're talking with Jeannie Higdon and Abby Behrens from the Butterfly Project. Once again, if you have questions or comments, 217-648-5510, the number to call, or you can email us, 4pm411 at WLCNonline.com. We'll go ahead and take our first break now, and we'll be back in 2 minutes with more from the Butterfly Project.
I'm so worried about everything that's going on at home. Is my caregiver safe? Are there scary things happening at home? Or an incident happened last night and I saw somebody go to jail or something, heaven forbid, even worse happen. How am I supposed to sit there and learn my ABCs and my colors and my numbers when all of my energy is focused on keeping myself safe? Or it's not safe at home, so I can come to school and maybe I can finally get a nap and go to sleep. It really, the younger they are, the more impact that it tends to actually have on our kiddos. And a lot of folks don't understand that.
And so you mentioned before that a lot of the folks who avail themselves of your services is through self-referral. Mm-hmm. What if someone might think they see someone who is in a domestic violence situation or suspects that there might be some aspect of that this person is being traumatized by? Are there any guidelines or steps that you can give those folks if they would like to? I don't know what the proper thing is.
Sure, how they would reach out to us.
Right, how they would reach out. Yeah.
Well, just the nature of the program that we do, everything is so confidential, and we would never disclose anything to anybody without specific consent from our program participants. But we work with schools a lot, and so schools a lot of times are seeing things, behaviors and concerns happening in the classroom, or daycares are seeing these. And what they might do is they can get the consent from the caregiver and give us a call and refer the family to us. And then from there, we kind of take it out of their hands and we reach out to the caregiver ourselves if it's safe. We would never reach out to somebody if it were not safe. So community partners, we have a very strong coalition, again, that we had talked about a little bit ago. And a lot of those partners, what are the focus of our coalitions is we know that the families need our support. How do we reach those families that are the most vulnerable, the most at risk, and how can we eliminate the barriers for these families so they can safely engage in services? And so certainly we get referrals from our community partners as well. And so
if it seems to me there's got to be kind of a balancing act there. If someone suspects there might be domestic violence or some sort of violence going on, I mean, obviously, if there is and you refer someone, you definitely, that's a good thing. But, if you happen to refer someone and there isn't domestic violence going on, I can see how people might be kind of hesitant about, I don't want to get someone in trouble if there's nothing going on there. Again, is that sort of an educational thing that you have to focus on as far as getting people to say, to realize it's okay to refer people, that you folks will do the investigation and figure out?
That's really what we do. So let's say you knew of somebody who you thought might be experiencing something or going through something. They can give us a call and we can talk with that person on our own. That way it takes kind of anybody else out of the middle of it. And if there's active domestic violence happening in the home, we would never want to interfere at that point in time. We would do so once it's safe for that caregiver. So we would connect somebody to our local services that specialize in serving families who are in active domestic violence stages. And then we can provide that next level of support once they're safely out of that situation. But that's what we do. And if they're not appropriate for our program, if domestic violence isn't kind of the root of those behaviors, we do a lot of referrals, again, to those other community partners that we had talked about to make sure that they're getting the most accurate services that specialize in the area of focus that they need.
And so I would guess, Abby, as a case manager, that would kind of be where you come in as far as assessing the situation and trying to, as Jeannie said, trying to connect the folks who are maybe going through that with the appropriate services. Is there, I'm guessing every case is different and every situation is different, so every day is different for you?
Yeah, as a case manager, every day definitely looks different because we're not just working with the families, but we're also working with, like Jeannie was talking about, community partners. So there's a lot of different tasks in a case manager's role, but making referrals and knowing what is going on in the community, as Jeannie also mentioned, we cover 5 counties total. And so with case management, that takes a lot of knowledge and digging into the communities and just being out there to really know what those referral sources are.
And we were talking during the break, you have a lot of other resources within the community, within your coalition, that can certainly assist folks, whether it's feeding them or clothing them or housing them or whatever it might be. So while it is the Butterfly Project, it's kind of like it takes a child to raise a village. You've got a whole network of services that you can provide that are other organizations that you partner with to kind of help folks out that are in that situation.
Yeah.
For sure, yes. That's exactly what the coalition focus is.
Mm-hmm.
And so do you want to tell us some of those other services or some of those organizations that help you folks out?
Yeah. Off of the top of my head, some of the main ones that I can think about are Lincoln Memorial Hospital. We work with a lot of different departments there. That's actually the group that allows us to host our coalition there, and they've been a lot of tremendous help. We have Chestnut Health Systems that we work with a lot, as well as the Lincoln School District.
We have the United Way program that we get to work with, and the Land of Lincoln Legal Services. So we love it when coalition or community members reach out to us and say, hey, I would love to be a part of this. It sounds like something that aligns with our vision. So if anybody would like to reach out to us to join that coalition, we would love to have them on board.
Okay, and what was the phone number again?
309-827-0374.
Okay, we are at just about 20 after, so we'll go ahead and take our second break. Once again, our guests today, Jeannie Higdon and Abby Behrens with the Butterfly Project. Next week, our guest will be Chuck Conzo, who is the City of Lincoln Treasurer. So he will talk to us about some of the goings-on within the city. Also, this programming note that there will be no Viewpoint program tomorrow morning due to the threat of inclement weather. So our scheduled guest was Don Cavey from the Logan County Department of Public Health. We will invite him back for a future program. But as I mentioned today, we are with Jeannie Higdon and Abby Behrens with the Butterfly Project. If you have questions, 217-648-5510, the number to call. We will be back in 2 minutes.
If you're an ally of this community, speak out. There are more of us together than apart, and so they need you to stand with them.
We are back on the 4 p.m. 411. Our guest today, once again, Jeannie Higdon and Abby Behrens with the Butterfly Project. If you have questions or comments, 217-648-5510, the number to call. We've got about 7-8 minutes left. So we were talking during the break that as part of the Butterfly Project, there's extensive training and education that you have to go through in order to be qualified and work on these kinds of in these kinds of situations. Can you tell us a little bit about what's required and some of the training that staff goes through?
I'd be happy to. So first we want to say that, if somebody's trusting us with their mental health of themselves or their young child, we really want to make sure that we respect and honor that trust that the families have given to us. So all of our therapists are master's level therapists working towards licensure. And so on top of that, then they are required to have very specialized and specific trainings in attachment. So the ARC therapy or the ARC training, attachment regulation and competency training, as well as a very extensive therapy training and EMDR therapy training. So those are all things that we really want to make sure that our therapists are knowledgeable in, that they're trained in, that they've got that experience again, because if you're trusting us with your most precious thing, your children, we want to make sure that we're mindful and respectful of that.
Okay, and Abby, since you're a case manager, I'm guessing you've undergone a lot of that training and put it to use in what you do every day.
Sure. So case managers don't have the same qualifications, or they don't have to meet the same needs as what a therapist has to do. So the education definitely looks different, but we as case managers will go through specific trainings as well, just to ensure that we're meeting our clients' needs. A few of our case managers, including myself, are car seat technicians, so that we can help and serve our families to make sure that their children are in the car safely. We've also gone through a training called Parents as Teachers, just to help educate us more on working with our families and making sure that we're meeting their needs at the right level. So those are just a few examples of what case managers have been through.
And so, I don't know if you would have these statistics with you or not, but how many cases do you typically see or administer, or whatever the proper term is, throughout a year?
Throughout a year, it varies a little bit. At any given time, we can be serving between 45 and 50 families, and that's just in our therapy component of it. And the case managers can look different. Their numbers that they can serve kind of goes up and down. Approximately 100 different families that we come into contact with in the different counties and the communities that we get to work in.
Okay, so that's the 5-county area that
Correct,
you're talking
yes.
about. Yeah, because again, doing a little research, according to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, I didn't realize this. In 2018, domestic violence accounted for 20% of all violent crime, and on a typical day, local domestic violence hotlines receive approximately 19,159 calls, which is an average of approximately 13 calls every minute. That was in 2020, according to that study, and that's in Illinois. Those are Illinois-specific statistics. So it's definitely a prevalent issue that needs to be addressed. It's not just, it's much more prevalent than perhaps folks realize.
When you think about it, it's 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men will be impacted by domestic violence at some point in their lives. And those numbers that you just were sharing with us, those are just the reported calls. Mm-hmm. Those aren't the ones that nobody reports or somebody doesn't recognize that it's abuse. Those are just the ones that have made it as far as the calling for help. So
with the Butterfly Project, and maybe with the topic of domestic violence in general, is there some stereotype or maybe some myth that maybe folks might have some preconceived notion that this is how these situations are, but in reality that's not really how they are? Is there some information you can share about that maybe folks maybe generally think it's always I don't know. I think back to the Burning Bed movie, the TV movie in 1984 that kind of shined a light on domestic violence, that people think it's a stereotypical husband abusing a wife, but there's, as we talked about earlier, there's so many more forms and so many more different types of domestic abuse that exists. Can you maybe speak to that a little bit about some of the other things that maybe aren't what people typically think of about when they think of domestic violence?
Well, I think probably the number one thing is that people think is that doesn't happen to me, that happens to somebody else, or that doesn't happen in my neighborhood. Mm-hmm. But domestic violence doesn't discriminate. It happens across all socioeconomic groups, all races, all genders, all relationship makeups. Domestic violence really doesn't discriminate against anybody. So there's no typical person that walks through our doors or we walk through their doors looking for services, because again, it's prevalent in everywhere you go. 1 in 4 women. So think about that. If you, in your head, you probably know 4 women or 7 men, and there's a good chance that one of them have been impacted by violence. And so one of the really important things that I think that our team does is we partner with our local domestic violence shelters and service providers very closely, is educating the community. If you see something, say something. Even if it's just, hey, I'm here, I'm a safe place, or knowing resources that you can share with somebody. I think that that's really important. And that's one of the big things that we do, is educating the community on what actually domestic violence is, because again, somebody that may not recognize that that's what they're experiencing. They may think that that's normal. This is how all relationships work, so it's just, this is normal. So educating those around us is really important to help with those statistics and getting rid of those stereotypes that people think.
Case Manager Abby, any thoughts on that topic? Or maybe things you see in case managing that sort of go against those stereotypes, or what people
when you were first talking about that question, the first thing that I thought of is how often financial abuse is overlooked. And so that's definitely something that we have noted in case management services, and that we have really tried to help our families with.
And so how can someone be abused financially?
Oh, yeah. Kind of a little bit how Jeannie mentioned earlier in the show about like power and control. So like not allowing them to access money, restricting them, just different things like that.
Okay.
It's really hard for somebody to leave if they don't have access to a vehicle, if they don't have access to their checking account, their own money that they, bring into the family, or aren't able to work as a controlled thing. You can't leave. If you can't leave the home to access those resources, how are you supposed to leave somebody? So isolation is key. A lot of times in that power and control, and that's one of the ways that somebody asserts control over somebody else.
Okay. So our guests today, once again, Jeannie Higdon and Abby Behrens with the Butterfly Project. We have reached 4:30, so any last-minute thoughts you would like to share?
Just, again, thank you for having us on today. And if somebody does have more questions, they can give us a call, again, at 309-827-0374, or check out our webpage at childrenshomeandaid.org. And we'd be happy to come out and speak to a group, or really just answer any more questions.
Okay, very good. So we've been talking with, once again, Jeannie Higdon and Abby Behrens with the Butterfly Project. We will be back next week with Chuck Conzo, the City of Lincoln Treasurer. And once again, no viewpoint program tomorrow morning due to the impending inclement weather, but we will invite Logan County Department of Public Health Administrator Don Cavey back to a future program. So, ladies, thanks for joining us, and we will hope to check in with you again a little bit later and learn more about this topic. So thanks again for spending time with us on the 4 p.m. 411. The preceding program is a presentation of WLCN 96.3 FM and WLCNonline.com.